the best way to think about investments is to be in a room with no one else and just think. And if that doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. And the disadvantage of being in any kind of a market-type environment on Wall Street would be the extreme is that you get overstimulated. You think you have to do something every day. I mean, the Canver family paid $2,000 for this company, and that you don't have to do much else if you pick one of those. And the trick then is not to do anything else, even not to sell it in 1919, which the family did later on. So what you're looking for is some way to get one good idea a year, and then ride it to its full potential. And that's very hard to do in an environment where people are shouting prices back and forth every 5 minutes and shoving reports under your nose and all that. Because Wall Street makes its money on activity. You make your money on inactivity. I mean, if everybody in this room trades their portfolio around every day with every other person, you're all going to end up broke, and the intermediary is going to end up with all the money. On the other hand, if you all own stock in a group of average businesses and just sit here for the next 50 years, you'll end up with a fair amount of money, and your broker will be broke. So his activity he's like a doctor who gets paid on how often he gets you to change pills. I mean, basically. If he gives you one pill and it cures you the rest of your life, he's got one sale, one transaction, and that's it. But if he can convince you that changing pills every day is the way to great health, it'll be great for him and the prescriptionists, and you'll be out a lot of money, and you won't be any healthier. You'll be a lot worse off financially. So you want to stay away from any environment that stimulates activity, and Wall Street would have the effect of doing that. When I went out to Omaha, I'd go back about once every 6 months, and I'd go back with a whole list of things I wanted to check out one way or another, companies I wanted to see, and I would get my money's worth out of those trips. But then I'd go back to Omaha and think about it.
You don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else, because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say, and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning, and that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way. I can't really tell you the answer. I mean, I didn't learn it in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability.
Buying the company that his company is named after was probably the worst investment decision.
That's true. We went into a terrible business because it was cheap. And it's what I refer to as the used cigar butt approach to investing. That you see the cigar butt down there, it's soggy, it's terrible. But there is one puff in it, and it's free. And that's what Berkshire was when we bought it. I mean, it was selling below working capital. Actually, buying Berkshire Hathaway, buying control of it, was probably the biggest single bad decision that I've made. And then I made all kinds of decisions that have cost us billions of dollars, but they've been mistakes of omission rather than commission. I mean, there were businesses that we knew enough to buy a lot of. I don't worry about not buying Microsoft because I didn't understand that business. I didn't understand Intel, but there were businesses that I did understand. Fannie Mae was one. I mean, I made a decision to buy it, and I didn't execute. And we would have made many billions of dollars on something that was within my circle of competence, and I didn't do it. And you don't see that. Conventional accounting doesn't record that. But believe me, it happened.
The question about what's going to happen to interest rates or where we go in the world, I don't think about the macro stuff. I just what you really want to do in investments is figure out what's important and knowable. If it's unimportant or unknowable, you forget about it. What you talk about is important, but in my view, it's not knowable. understanding Coca-Cola is knowable, or Wrigley, or Eastman Kodak, or anything. I mean, you can understand those businesses. That's knowable. And whether it turns out to be important depends on where your valuation leads you and the current price and all of that. But we have never either bought a business or not bought a business because of any macro feeling of any kind. We don't read things about predictions about interest rates or business or anything like that because it doesn't make any difference. I mean, let's say in 1972 when we bought See's Candy, I think maybe Nixon put on the price controls a little bit later. Let's say we'd seen that. But so what? We'd have missed a chance to buy something for $25 million that's earning $60 million pre-tax now. I mean, we don't want to pass up the chance to do something intelligent because of some prediction about something that we're no good on it anyway. So we just don't read or listen to or do anything in relation to macro factors at all. Zero. And the typical investment counseling organization goes out and they bring out their economists, they trot him out, and he gives you this big macro picture, and then they start working from there on down. In our view, that's nonsense. And if Alan Greenspan was on one side of me and Bob Rubin on the other side, they were both whispering in my ear exactly what they're going to do the next 12 months. It wouldn't make any difference to me in what I pay for executive jet or general reinsurance or anything else I do.
Who was Ben Graham? He was your primary mentor, model?
He was a wonderful man, and he was my professor at Columbia. I read his book when I was 19 at the University of Nebraska, and I'd started investing when I was 11, and I started reading about it when I was like 7. So I'd gone through I read every book in the Omaha Public Library that there was on, by the time I was 12, on investing and stock market. And I had a lot of fun, but I never really found out, I never got grounded in anything. And it was entertaining, but it wasn't going to be profitable. And then I read Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor, when I was at the University of Nebraska. And that just opened the whole thing up to me. Yeah, and I named my oldest son is named Howard after my dad, Graham Buffett, and he was a marvelous man. Never expected anything from me in return. He just did all these things for younger people.
You have just a couple of quick examples of the things that he did that you will look back on? It's one thing to read something, but quite another to see it in action.
Well, but what he did was he got me thinking, not as a stock as something with a ticker symbol that wiggles around and that that you look at charts on or anything. He taught me to think about it as part of a business, and that was vital. And he taught me not to really pay any attention to stock market fluctuations except when they were working in my favor, so that not to get elated because something had gone up or depressed because it went down. So if I knew the facts on something and it went down, I bought more of it, and because I looked at it as a business. And then he taught that famous lesson about a margin of safety, that you don't drive a truck that weighs 9,900 pounds across a bridge that says limit 10,000 pounds, because you can't be that sure about it. If you see something like that, you go down a little further down the road and you find one that says limit 20,000 pounds, and that's the one you drive across.
If you think about it, if you have a reasonable job, you'll be eating at McDonald's and I'll be eating at McDonald's. So we're to push on food. I mean, in fact, I hope it's Dairy Queen, actually. And and if you come to Dairy Queen, you'll see me. And you can order anything on the menu I can order, and we both can afford it. You'll wear the same clothes I wear. I'll pay more for my suits, but as soon as I put them on, they look cheap on me. So we'll look about the same. We'll both live in the same kind of houses. I live in that house from 41 years ago, and it's warm in winter, and it's cool in summer, and it's comfortable. And you'll live in a house that's similar. And what difference does it make if you have 50 more rooms or guest houses or all that? It'll probably just bring you problems. I mean, you have to worry about the greenskeeper or something when you get through. So I have been in the houses of people where the houses are worth probably 200 times what my house is worth, and I would not be any happier in those houses at all. In fact, I'd be less happy. I just have one more thing to worry about, and dozens of people around the place, and people quitting, and people stealing from you, and all kinds of things. To hell with it. We'll drive the same kind of car. In fact, you'll probably drive a better car. I drive a car that's about 8 years old. I don't know what it's worth now, but it gets me around fine. I mean, I'm perfectly happy. We'll watch the same television. We'll work on the same computer pretty much. The only difference will be how we travel long distances. I will fly in a plane that's more comfortable than than flying Southwest Airlines or something, and which I've got nothing against. But that's the one real big difference. And other than that, I do what I like every day. I hope you'll do what you like every day to do. And I work with nice people. I hope you work with nice people. And there's 24 hours in the day, and those are where the hours go. So great wealth is the tiniest bit different in a real sense than having just a decent income. And to trade a decent income and something you love doing and something where you feel worthwhile doing it for huge wealth where you trade off a lot of your principles would be a terrible mistake.
But I will say this. You talk about learning from mistakes. I really believe it's better to learn from other people's mistakes as much as possible. But we don't spend any time looking back at Berkshire. I've got a partner, Charlie Munger. We've been pals for 40 years. We've never had an argument. We disagree on things a lot, but we don't have arguments about it, and we never look back. We just figure there's so much to look forward to that there's just no sense thinking about what we might have. It just doesn't make any difference. I mean, you can only live life forward, and you can learn something perhaps from the mistakes, but the big thing to do is stick with the businesses you understand. And so if there's a generic mistake of getting outside of your circle of competence and buying something because somebody tips you on it or something of the sort in an area you don't know anything about, I mean, that you should learn something from that, which is that you stay with what you can figure out yourself. I mean, you really want your decision making to be by looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I'm buying 100 shares of General Motors at 55 because. And I mean, it's your responsibility if you're buying it, and there's got to be a reason. And if you can't state the reason, you shouldn't buy it. If it's because somebody told you about it at a cocktail party, not good enough. I mean, it's got to be something. It can't be because the volume, the chart looks good on it or anything like that. It's got to be a reason you'd buy the business, and we stick to pretty carefully. That's one of the things Ben Graham taught me.